All right, I know what you're thinking. What is Vern up to now? Well, Vern's going to build a computer. Here we have the AMD Ryzen 9. Yeah. Have the Corsair SF600 power source. The MSI MPG X570 Gaming Plus motherboard. 2 terabyte SATA hard drive. 32 gigabytes of DDR4 ballistics gaming memory. That should give me some torque when it comes to memory. 970 Evo Plus 500 gigabytes solid state hard drive. That's where my operating system will live. And a KO Ultra Geforce RTX 2060 video card. All in a Corsair Carbide 275R series case. This should be a good replacement for old Betsy. Now, I'm not going to knock old Betsy. She was a good workhorse for a long time. But it's time that she goes. Now, this is my GPU, and that's going to live here. So the first thing you want to do is pick this up and then open this. Now be careful when you open this. You don't want your GPU to go flying. Probably the last thing that you want. Now you'll notice there's a little triangle here on the base. That's going to coincide with a little triangle on this. And if you look carefully, it's right there. So this is going to sit in like so. Now when I pulled this all the way back, my CPU just dropped right into place. All right, that's locked down. These are the bolts that tighten down the shield. Now these are 3 different kind of bolts for my shield, and those will go in one of these landing holes. Looks like I've got one there already. You can see it. All right, now I have to peel the protective coating off the adhesive because the adhesive here is a heat sink. I don't want to touch this because it's got glue on it. You don't want to crank it down, you just want to snug it. Now, I'm going to put on our DDR4 32 gigabytes. Now you'll notice these have a slot in them. The slot is not centered. it's off to one side. That way you can only put these in one way only. Okay, that's one. And remember, you skip one. And try to put these in as straight as possible. If you try to slide them in at an angle, they're gonna jam. And you'll know when you got them all the way in because this clip, there we go. Now something cool about this cooler is that it has thermal paste put in from the factory. Now I like it that they did it in a dot sequence like that, because when this thing gets locked down, it'll spread that out. And I've repasted the CPU chips on computers before, and it's really easy to put too much on. And too much is nearly as bad as not having enough or having it hardened on you. All right, that's one massive cooler. You can see we got it on and locked down. And we got it plugged in. I'm going to test fit my motherboard. And it fits. Oh, that looks good. Now we've got these little guys, and these are to hold the motherboard in place. You can tell because they got a little hat on them. And this is where it helps to have a magnetic screwdriver. Now, I recommend starting all your screws, but don't tighten them. If you tighten any of your screws before you start all of them, then your holes might not line up. It's pretty true no matter what you're working on, whether it's a car, motorcycle, piece of furniture. If they have multiple screws to screw down a plate, a casing, a motherboard, doesn't matter what it is. If it takes multiple screws, you can misalign fractionally the plate or the casing while you're installing it. They all have a slight tolerance for adjustment. So like I said, if you don't start all these, you're gonna find if you tighten one up, the rest of them aren't gonna line up. And you're gonna be kicking yourself. Now, if you start to thread these and they just stick, that means you're probably cross-threading. So reverse screw and then softly go clockwise again until it doesn't catch. You should get about 3 or 4 good, clean, easy turns before it gets tough to turn. But if it's tough to turn right off the bat, you've cross-threaded it. Don't do that. Don't ask me how I know. this screw here, the standoff underneath the motherboard, comes with the case in a bag. There's one in place, but it's got a stud on it. I'll show you that. Put it right here. See that stud? This stud was pointing straight up. I'll show you, it's got no threads. That was pointing straight up. That was right here underneath the motherboard. And with this heatsink comes a couple of these standoffs in a bag. So you got the choice of fine thread or heavy thread, and the heavy thread is the one I used. So it has the correct size thread for the small screw that holds this down. Okay, so here you got one screw, two, you got one there, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I think we're back to the beginning, one in the corner. And then of course the one under here actually connects this heatsink directly to the tower chassis. And that's all there is to connecting the motherboard. All right, onward and upward. Now this is an audio plug, but I'm going to be using a Focusrite. Use this for plugging in my guitar with a virtual amplifier, but it also makes a very good sound card. Now let's dry fit this and make sure it fits. Fan on the bottom. Okay, that gives me about 3 inches, a little over 3 inches of room, so that's plenty of room. I'm going to run these cables before I put that in. Okay. Okay, you can see what I'm going to do here. This hole coincides with the plug for the 24 pin, so I'm going to run that up there, free up some space in the bottom. Putting that puppy right there. And the rubber lip is over the middle, so that should help protect it from dust. Now I marked this cover, this screw as a mount screw, just in case I ever have to pull this motherboard out, because this solid state hard drive heatsink does not obviously let you know, and you might pull this and break the circuit board, not knowing that there's a mount screw here in the center. So just for future reference, in case I forget, which I usually do, I marked it with a paint pen. Paint pen. I use these for a lot of things. Car parts, when I'm doing engine work, rebuilding engines, distributor cap, marking the cylinder and the cylinder wires, yeah, stuff like that. Pretty handy. Okay, here's where the CPU plugs go. Here's the 8-pin and here's the 4-pin. And I don't think it matters which one of these you pull apart. They both come apart. See? Just like that. And they're marked CPU on the side. So I take it the side that I took off that's marked CPU is the side that actually goes in the plug. Alright, I'm going to use some of these cable ties and do some cable management here. And you got these nice little pushed up clips. I don't know if you exactly call them clips, but they're areas that you can slip a cable tie through and hold your cables. Now these are my CPU cables and they're going to live right here. This being the top of the case. There's a little hole right behind the accessory panel in the back, and it goes right up. These come right out at where the CPU power plug is. Now it's best to do this part when you've got everything routed and you know where it's going to live, and then you're done. So this is my 24-pin cable. It goes in the top one of the side. This is a PCIe cable. This will be for my graphics card. This is my SATA hard drive cable. These were in the case. These are for the controls for the top, power and such, USB. And this is for my sound card. Now on the sound card, there's a little space, and I believe this is it, right above the power source, and that'll go into there. Now your HD audio plug is down here in the lower left corner, and there's one plug missing. So if you look, you'll see that there's a blank spot on the plug, so the plug receivers will match up. You'll put this in so that matches with that blank spot there, and then you have your audio connected. So I just run this through this little hole here. That's right above the power source. And Bob's your uncle. Well, this is nice. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 fan connectors. And you've got a USB 1, USB 2, USB 3. Okay, one of the cables is a USB 3 cable. This is going to live right here, and you can tell where the way it goes because there's a little notch right in the center here, which matches with the little raised section here that just plugs right in. So let's find a way for that to go through. I think through here is the easiest, with all the power cables. That should put me right in the ballpark. Now you can see it brought it up through here, and that gives me just enough to turn it and plug it in. There we go. In. Okay, now we've got our fans hooked up. So we got the rear fan, and that's in fan position 1, front fan, fan position 2, that's this fan here. So now we got to figure out where the front control plugs go. Now these are marked here: LED plus, LED minus, power switch, reset switch. And you get to identify on these double pins which ones are positive. And you can see that there's a little arrow. Let's put these side by side. There's a little arrow on one side, and that's your positive side. So that's how you identify it. I'm going to run this through the bottom side. Here we go. You got a nice handy little diagram here that tells you which ones go where. You got plus minus for the reset, and it's actually opposite kitty corner, plus minus for the power switch on top. You got a blank spot here and then a reserved part here, and here you have your plus minus LED power switches. All right, so I got some surgical clamps, and you can probably tell by the burnt tips that I performed a lot of surgery with these. Yep. Yeah, that was fiddly. Now next up, I'm going to hook in our graphics card. So I've already pulled the rubber plug off of here, and need to take the backs off this. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull number 2 and number 3 off, because this is a double slot card. Okay, there's 1, and there's 2. It's a good idea to hang on to these. Now you want to go with your uppermost slot. That's the slot that's got the most highway capacity, if you want to put it that way, to handle a GPU. And this is the Geforce RTX 2060. Now it's not the 2080, but for my purposes it'll do just fine. These are great cards. Now that I have that catch put back, I'm going to carefully put this in. Put it in a square. Now you hear that click? That means we're there. It's all in. That means that little lever popped up when I got it all the way down. Now we're going to put our screws back in, the ones we took out for the placeholders. And this is where my PCIe cable, the second one, goes. I'll be sliding this in here and aligning those little nubs with the screw holes. Kind of like this system because you don't really need to screw a hard drive into its bay. I never saw the need for that. And it fits just like that. So I've got my connections exposed, and I'm going to leave it disconnected until I've got the Windows operating system hooked up. So I've got my power cable here, and then I've got my data cables here. I've got a choice of 2 straights or one 90 degree, one 90 degree, and one straight. Now I'm going to put the 90 degree on the motherboard and the straight one on the hard drive. But I'm going to run this through, but I'm not going to connect it to the motherboard until, like I said, I've got Windows installed, because I want Windows to install on my solid state drive. This is going to be a backup drive for files. Now let's see if there's a handy little spot for that cable to run through. So I'm going to come in through this opening here and then into SATA 1. And ladies and gentlemen, that is that. Now we can test it. Well, as you can see, the build is complete. I loaded up Windows using this external DVD disk drive, USB input. The only thing I had to do was set my BIOS to boot up from an external source, and everything worked great. I made sure that my operating system was loaded onto my solid state drive, and while I was doing that, before I did that, I made sure that my hard disk drive, which is 2 terabytes, was disconnected so there would be no mistakenly loading the operating system onto the wrong drive. Went smooth as silk, no problems. Now I have a system that boots up really fast, wakes up really fast, and can handle the load of editing videos, and basically I'm a happy camper. One thing that I did also is finally got myself a new monitor arm that adjusts. Works great. And I looked at a lot of the reviews online, and it kind of steered me toward this heavier duty one. This one will hold up to a 40-inch monitor, and mine is 27. At first when I ordered it, I thought maybe I'm making a mistake, maybe it's going to be too hard to move and too hard to position, but it's not. It moves where I put it, stays where I put it. I can move it there, move it out, and yeah, it makes life a whole lot more simple. One of the things I really love about it is when I'm sitting here working at my desk, I like to have it down like this because I'm looking downward, which is a more natural position. Because, I mean, you got your brow here, right? So you're going to be looking down. So anyway, this was a big improvement to my old system. Makes life a lot easier. So I would call this a successful build, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next project, whatever that may be. I'm always doing something. See you next time.